Okay, we finally did it. It's peak 2020. Aliens are real. Aliens are real, apparently. We've seen more than enough news stories to show us aliens are real. So maybe it's a good time to talk about the movie Skylines. Welcome to the Film Threat Podcast. I am Chris Gore. I'm happy to talk to you today about an independent sci-fi feature, Skylines, which is the third in the series of these films. And director Liam O'Donnell is with us today. Liam, welcome to the Film Threat Podcast. It's a pleasure to talk to you, sir.
Thank you, Chris. Pleasure to be here.
I got to say, I really love the first Skylines film. It's very different than the third film that you've made in this series. Sort of just introduces the concept. I mean, it seems like across all of these films, there's been a lot of world building, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Like, and I did honestly in the little byline here where it says Skylines, I think the E is supposed to be a 3. Right. Like
well, yeah, we had a bit of a clearing issue because there was a German show called Skylines that Netflix made. And so, yeah, we like filmed and everything was Skylines. And then they're like, you can't clear it. So, the solution was either come up with a new title, which I was too married to, doing the aliens type riff, seeing the movie so kind of indebted to aliens. So I opted for the 3. Then, of course, once Vertical is distributing it, they're like, actually, we can clear the regular the regular E in all the English-speaking territories. So I'm like, I wish you'd told me that before I finished the movie and put a 3 on the end title. But it is what it is.
But this is first of all, I cannot believe the epic scale that this film is. It really just, each of these Skyline movies has been different than the previous one. It kind of adds a little bit more to the lore of the world, and this one does as well. I mean, Earth is in peril and they're taking the fight to the aliens. It's crazy and over the top. And I'm watching this thing, these action sequences. I'm like, oh my God, like this is, I mean, I just don't know how you pulled together. You've got creature and makeup effects, practical effects, mixed with digital, mixed with, I mean, it's just, it's really bonkers. How did you pull all of this together?
I think you kind of hit it on the head when you said, each one's different, but each movie is a learning experience to go into the next movie. For the first one, it was such a small shooting budget. It was such an independent movie. It was like, we just want to make something and get it out there. And the directors and the owners of Hydraulics had this visual effects company. So, we were able to raise the really cheap production budget. And then they were able to, use their own resources to do all these massive visual effects. So for part 2, it was like, we ended up spending like a good amount of money there. What if we looked at that pie and we reorganized that a little bit to spend more on the shooting budget and kind of, have a more balanced, I guess, approach. And that included working with practical effects because, we had worked with practical effects on AVP2. And in the interim, I got to be pretty good friends with Alec Gillis and Tom Woodruff Jr. from Amalgamated Dynamics, tried to produce one of their films. So I was really kind of steeped in foam latex creatures. And I wanted to bring that back for the second one, which ended up being a lot of fun. And we actually ended up just keeping them. We put them in like these big wood coffins and we kept them for like on ice for 3 years. And then we brought them out and we had a really great practical effects team in Spain refurbish those suits, put on a fresh coat of paint, clean out the really nasty insides of them and put in new lining and everything to make them clean and sanitary. And then, we use them again. So it's the kind of indie filmmaking where you just kind of use every available resources as many times as possible.
Well, that's really smart to take the stuff from the last film and use it in the new film.
All the assets too, the visual effects assets, like even some of the spaceship interior stuff that we built in the last one, I'm using it for different things here that's kind of invisible, but you just redress it. But like once you build a very big CG atrium, it's quite flexible to be used in all these different environments.
The other thing that can't be ignored is the stunt work on this movie, which I think is just way beyond. I mean, the fight sequences, the stunt work. Can you tell me about designing those sequences and the fact that it really felt like an action comic book, parts of it?
Oh, that's awesome. Thank you. Yeah, I mean, the second one we worked with the Uwais team, you know, Iko Uwais, his choreography group, and Yaya Noreen, who returns in this one. So I got a real, you know, education in action filmmaking and martial arts filmmaking. So for part 3, you know, I knew we wanted to keep that, and I wanted to bring in, you know, the last one was kind of LA and Asia based, Indonesia based. This one was very European based, and we filmed in Vilnius, Lithuania. So I became really recommended these guys called Real Deal Stunts out of Berlin. And they've been in like every action movie, especially like the past 3 or 4 years. Like they're the guys that like Hobbs and Shaw beat the shit out of. I think Harley Quinn beats the shit out of all of them. Like they work a lot with 8711 and the John Wick guys. And so they're young, hungry, independent filmmakers. And they would just kind of be, you know, within their lab, they're pitching me. You know, obviously we write out the scenes. I write out the action pretty detailed in the script, but there's still scenes that you can never write as detailed as what an action designer is going to come up with. And it's kind of like every other process where they kind of will shoot different vignettes and push it back, and you make notes, and then, you know, hopefully on the day you have something close to what's going to be. But I'm pretty improvisational, so even within that, there were things that I would throw at them at the last minute, and then we would kind of reshape things on the go and make it work. But we're really just lucky in. Well, part of it's lucky and part of it's hiring great people is like actors that can do stunts. You know, I mean, Daniel Bernhardt's been, you know, doing martial arts and films for like 30 years. He can do anything. He was like our workhorse. But what we really lucked out with was Lindsay and Jonathan Howard, who are both kind of primarily coming in from the acting side, are really athletic, and, you know, they do Thai boxing on their own time. So they were really adept at getting the choreo very quickly because, you know, with an indie film, you don't have the 3 months prep with the greatest trainers in the world. They're like showing up and they're shooting in 3 weeks. So it's like, go, 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 go.
Well, I want to make sure to mention to our audience, you need to see the trailer for this film. So seek it out on YouTube, whatnot, or if you're listening to this, get to YouTube and check out the trailer just so you can see what we're talking about. But one of the things that struck me was, and stay for the credits. Okay, when you watch the film, stay for the credits, because there's, I mean, clearly you capture in that credit, you guys had fun. So is there like a mood on the set of just keeping things light? I mean, obviously you're playing with these big toys and it looks fun. I mean, amidst all the like peril and drama, but can you talk about like keeping that mood on the set and keeping things rolling? Because I just think this movie is just so ambitious. It's crazy.
Yeah, it actually takes about a week for me to like establish that tone, because I tend to write fairly earnest, and then I tell people like, don't take it that seriously. You know, it's like, so they come in and they're like, it's really heavy, and I'm like, no, okay, we're taking it serious. We're not making fun of the movie, but we believe in ourselves. We believe in the movie, but there's like a fine line of fun that you have to find within the material, and always definitely encouraging the actors to bring their own moments of levity, which I really liked in this movie. I felt like it was something that set it apart from the other two, is that even when there'd be a very emotional scene, we could kind of, you know, lighten things up shortly afterwards. But yeah, it is like, you know, you've got a crazy independent schedule to make something this ambitious, where it's like, you know, 35 main unit days, 9 action unit days. I think we had 2 splinter unit days to do something this ambitious. That's kind of a short period of time. So you can't like be totally dilly-dallying on set, but you kind of have to recognize how, you know, ridiculous and lucky we are to be making this movie. So I try to keep it, you know, intense and focused. But, you know, when someone trips when they're coming into the doorway, there's no reason to yell about it. You just laugh and get back to, you know, your marks and go again.
Well, the credits really made it look like it was a lot of fun to work on the film.
Yeah, and it was a special group, I'd say too. And you know, you're in Vilnius, Lithuania in the summer. It was a beautiful place, and it kind of felt like summer camp.
Man, so what would you say, like you with this? I feel like it's just so ambitious, so big. What do you say to independent filmmakers who are trying to? We've seen kind of a resurgence and a rise in independent sci-fi. Not anything, I haven't seen anything as ambitious as what you've done, but I've seen a lot of really like movies like Vast of Night, which came out earlier this year on
Oh yeah,
Amazon
I heard that was
Prime,
great.
was a cool small sci-fi movie. And we're seeing more and more of this, that it's possible that kids who grew up watching the Star Wars films, it's like, hey, I can make something like that now. Do you have any pieces of advice, like what you did with the budget, where you put your resources? I mean, obviously you were fortunate enough to be able to use assets from the previous films, but what sort of advice would you give?
My advice, like personally, is to not model your writing on the current day films, because I think you're watching all these Marvel movies, you're watching these big huge budget movies, and you're going to tend to want to write like that. But what I do is I try to go back and look at movies in the 70s and the 80s as for my inspiration, because they were so limited by what was possible, that they used a lot more practical effects and physical sets. So that was really kind of that's really the difference on this movie. If you look at it, I mean, I remember the breakthrough for me was when my son was like getting into Star Wars and watching the first Star Wars again. And I started budgeting it in my head. And I was like, you could probably make this movie for like under $40 million. It's not a $200 million movie by any means. The only really big CG scene is the ending on the Death Star. The rest is just a lot of, practical sets and physical practical, creatures. So that was kind of a breakthrough for me, to be like, this is actually more what I should be writing to, which is funny enough, because I feel like Mandalorian's doing a really good job of that right now. I mean, they obviously an episode of that is more than this entire film, but it's still not like every action sequence doesn't like turn into like a 10-minute long previs. You know what I mean? So there's I think some of that too is like having the action sequences of the modern day blockbuster are so long and they're so intricate that they can be kind of overwhelming, especially when you're first starting. And what I tried to do, my lesson from the last movie, is I think I was trying to write these bigger, longer, crazier set pieces. And for this one, I really tried to keep them to like 2 minutes and to have a lot of pop and to have a big character moment like in each one. And that way I got more variety of them and got to see the characters either using their powers or overcoming obstacles in different ways.
See, now that's what I love, is it's grounded in the character moments. There are a lot of good, like fun one-liners, and there's a camaraderie also that you can see, and it really comes through. Wow. Liam O'Donnell, it's just been a pleasure to talk to you. I want to thank our sponsor, Storyblocks. Go to storyblocks.com/filmthreat, all sorts of assets for filmmakers. But I also have to ask you, Liam, one final question before I let you go. And Skylines, by the time you see this or listen to this, Skylines will be out, so check it out. But I got to ask you a question. We've been seeing all this stuff in the news about UFOs and aliens being real. I mean, this stuff, every day it seems like there's every week, new story about UFOs, aliens. What are your thoughts on that? Because you work in that realm. What are you thinking? It's like a promo for Skylines, all those monoliths that are appearing everywhere. It's bizarre.
I know. I and the funny thing is that I'm kind of just like a healthy skeptic always about this stuff. It feels hard to believe that our current president wouldn't have leaked this information already.
Right.
That's kind of the biggest problem for me, is that like he'd be like, oh, okay, you're right. It's the responsible thing not to tell everybody that aliens exist. Like that doesn't reconcile. But yeah, it's definitely a very interesting time. And I mean, I'm like most people who grew up watching the Unsolved Mysteries and those UFO specials, and obviously the X-Files, and wanting to believe. And now the older I get and all this stuff is coming, I'm like arm's length, like don't get me like too excited about this. I have to see it to believe it now.
Well, I wonder if we look really closely on one of those monoliths, it'll say, "See Skylines, opens December 18th." Like, what?
I know. I should hire this firm, whoever's doing it. I mean, it's great viral marketing. You're right.
Awesome. Liam, thank you for talking to us on the Film Threat podcast. I really appreciate it.
All right. Thanks, Chris. Thanks for having me.
Take care. Have a great holiday.
You too.